A man is shot and killed by federal agents. The government says it was self-defense, but eyewitnesses, they call it an execution. Today, we're going to dig into the two completely conflicting stories about the death of Alex Pretti, all based on reporting from The Guardian, to try and understand what happens when an official narrative and sworn testimony go head-to-head.
And this, right here, is the heart of it all. This is a quote from a sworn affidavit filed in federal court. An eyewitness, on the record, directly challenging the official story with just 5 words. It is wrong. This isn't just a minor disagreement. It's a direct accusation, and it sets the stage for everything we're about to unpack. So who was Alex Pretti? Well, he was a 37-year-old ICU nurse. Think about that. Someone who literally dedicated his life to saving others. But on one particular Saturday in Minneapolis, his own life was taken by federal agents. And the moments leading up to that fatal encounter are at the center of this huge, ongoing dispute.
All right, so to really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at both sides of the coin. Let's start with the official version of events, the one that was first put out there for the public by the Trump administration. The language the government used in its report is, well, it's very specific and it's loaded. Pretti is called a gunman. They say he was brandishing a weapon and threatening to massacre the officers. This paints a really clear picture, doesn't it? The idea is he was a dangerous threat and the shooting was a necessary act of self-defense. Case closed. But yeah, that is not the only story. Not by a long shot. Because just hours after the shooting, a completely different narrative starts to take shape. And this one isn't coming from a press release. It's coming from sworn testimony filed in federal court. So our first witness, get this, she's a children's entertainer who is on her way to a gig, but she was also a community activist, and she was there that day specifically to document what ICE agents were doing in her neighborhood. And she ends up filming the entire incident from just 5 feet away, a perspective that turns out to be absolutely crucial. And her testimony is just chilling. She states, quote, "I didn't see him with a gun. They threw him to the ground. 4 or 5 agents had him on the ground, and they just started shooting him." And here's where the story completely flips. According to her, Pretti wasn't the aggressor at all. He was actually trying to help another person, a woman who had just been shoved to the ground by the agents. And it was at that moment, she says, that he was tackled, sprayed with some kind of chemical agent, and then shot. So there it is, the absolute core of the contradiction. Her testimony just flat out rejects the official story. The man did not approach the agents with a gun, he approached them with a camera. One simple object that changes everything. But she wasn't the only one who saw what happened. There was another witness, a 29-year-old physician who was watching the whole thing unfold from their apartment window. So now you have a trained professional eye providing another critical perspective on that day. And you know what? The physician's testimony backs up the first witness on that huge critical point. They said they saw Pretti yelling at the agents, sure, but, and this is the key part, they did not see him attack the agents or brandish a weapon of any kind. As a doctor, their first instinct was obviously to help. They rushed down to the scene, but by the time they were actually allowed to approach Pretti's body, it was too late. All they could do was note the number of bullet wounds in his back, at least 3. And then the physician adds this one detail that is just incredibly disturbing. They testified that the federal agents weren't trying to help Pretti. They weren't performing CPR or any other kind of medical aid. Instead, they, quote, appeared to be counting his bullet wounds. So what we're left with here are 2 stories that just cannot be reconciled. It's impossible for them both to be true. So let's put them side by side and see just how far apart they really are.
Okay, just look at this. The government says gunman, witnesses say camera. The official claim is brandishing a weapon. Sworn testimony says he did not have a weapon. The government says he threatened to massacre officers. Witnesses say he was trying to help a woman. The official story is self-defense. The witnesses describe him being shot multiple times while he was already on the ground. These aren't just slightly different perspectives. These are 2 completely different realities.
So what on earth do you do with 2 stories that are this far apart? Why does this all matter so much? Let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. Remember, these aren't just casual statements from people on the street. These are sworn affidavits. This is formal legal testimony submitted in federal court as part of a lawsuit filed by the ACLU. These witnesses are putting their names and their credibility on the legal line. And this is really what it all boils down to. On one side, you have a government narrative of a violent aggressor and a necessary act of self-defense. On the other, you have sworn testimony about an unarmed man killed while trying to help someone. These two stories can't both be true. And the truth, whatever it turns out to be, is what will determine whether the killing of Alex Pretti was justified or not.
And so we're left with a question that goes far beyond this one tragic case. When the official story and sworn testimony are in complete opposition, what's supposed to happen next? How do we find the truth? And what does it mean for all of us when the two sides of a story are so far apart that they can't possibly both be true?